of what's really happening on the ground, I think, are gone. And we saw that in some of the polls that were reported in the papers this morning. I've often thought that in 2005, if you'd interviewed 1,000 people in my constituency of Putney, would you really have seen the swing that I was about to first get re-elected? I don't know. But I think what it shows is it's exceptionally hard in these political climates to really see what's going on the ground, and that's what we're seeing tonight.
So does it make sense in those circumstances to say I've concluded the only way to guarantee certainty and stability for the years ahead is to hold this election, which I've said over and over again I won't hold? Words of the Prime Minister.
I think the Prime Minister was right to recognise that Britain was in a very different place now than we were in 2015, and it was right to go to the country and to ask them the question about what their views were, what people's views were about the direction that they wanted for the future. It may be, but what we're seeing in this vote is that people are still in a debate about what that future direction should be. But it is very, very early days. So I think it's easy to pick on some results in some parts of the country and to say that they are going to be massively representative. I suspect you'll continue to see some very locally different results that will, on occasion, contrast, as we've seen the Conservatives doing very well in Scotland, less well in London, and I think we'll have to see how this plays out across the rest of the night.
Justin Green, thank you very much. And as I said, we're joined from Derby now by Margaret Beckett. Good evening, Margaret Beckett. If I'm not mistaken, you were one of the people who gave Jeremy Corbyn your support in the leadership for the Labour Party on the grounds there should be a fair contest, and afterwards said you were a complete moron for having done it. Are you still a moron?
As somebody else said that, but I didn't think it was right to dissent. But yes, I agreed that it was a good thing to widen the debate. And then I realised that it might be thought that I was suggesting that people should vote for someone who, as Jeremy was, had no experience at all of the front bench. And so I made haste to say, I think he should be part of the debate. I don't think he should necessarily be the leader. There you go.
So what do you make of what's happening?
Well, there's no question that I think the two things that I don't think you can dispute about this election campaign is that Jeremy has performed infinitely better than anybody, probably including Jeremy, ever expected he could, and that Theresa May has performed infinitely worse than anybody expected that she could. And, you know, it's the conventional wisdom, but why is it conventional? Because sometimes it's also wise. The British people don't tend to like having an election they didn't have to have.
So what is the consequence going to be if we're seeing a much weakened Prime Minister, a much damaged Conservative Party? At this stage, are you thinking there might be a Jeremy Corbyn premiership?
To be honest, David, what I'm principally thinking is I'm wondering, fearing, I might say, whether I was prescient when we put our stuff away in the garage tonight and I said to my husband, let's do it carefully because you never know, we might need it again soon.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said then. Can you say it again? I had another voice in my ear. Can you just repeat it?
When we put away our equipment from our car tonight, I said we'd better do it carefully because you never know, we might need it again soon. It was a joke. I hope it's still going to be a joke.
And as far as the sort of future of the Labour Party goes, I mean, clearly the people you would recognise as on the left of the party, the part of the party that you don't occupy, are making the running now. And whether it's Jeremy Corbyn or somebody else, do you think this is the new direction Labour's going to go in?
Listen, I have always regarded myself as being either soft left or centre left, depending on how you define these terms. And then other people, if I may say so, usually in your profession.
Thank you very much for joining us. We've got two more results in, Emily, have we?
Yeah, I just want to show you this one. There's so much churn overnight, it seems, that the Conservatives are taking seats in Scotland from the SNP, and it seems now from the Lib Dems in England. This one is Southport, where John Pugh stood down, and maybe that helped the Conservatives, we don't know, but Damien Moore has now taken this. Not only have they taken it, but they have pushed the Lib Dems into third place here. So they had this seat before. The Lib Dems are now in third place. Conservatives on 39% share of the vote, and I can show you what that change looks like. Gains then for Labour and for the Conservatives, at the expense, it seems, of UKIP as well as the Lib Dems. This wasn't a particularly high Leave area, so the Lib Dems would have hoped to do well here, and yet both those parties, parties of Leave we now say, seem to have done better. The swing is 7.6% towards the Conservatives, so a bit of a ray of light in England.
Can I interrupt you, Emily,
here.
for a result?
All done.
We'll come back to you. We've got a result coming in from Renfrewshire East. SNP held by Francis Oswald.
I, Lorraine Ann McMillan, returning officer for the East Renfrewshire constituency, declare that the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows. Paul Masterton, Scottish Conservative and Unionist, 21,496.
Bloody hell.
That's 21496. Blair George McDougall, Scottish Labour Party, 14,346. Parliament for the East Renfrewshire constituency. The total number of votes cast was 53,805, and the total number of ballot papers rejected was 67. The ballot papers were rejected for the following reasons. For want of the official mark.
Well, something's a little bit awry with our
Voting
system
for
here,
more
because
than
you
one
should be able to see the
candidate.
but the truth is that the Conservatives
Writing or
have
mark on
leapt
which the voter
2
can
places to
identify 0,
top the ballot here.
unmarked or void for uncertainty.
SNP were on 23,000. The Conservatives with
Before I
21,000 have
pass
taken the
to,
seat.
Paul Masterton,
I'm not quite sure what's happened to our figures.
could I just thank
No
the
doubt we can
staff
sort it
tonight
out
for
in
all
just a
their
moment.
hard work, and
Shall we go back
very
to
detailed
where we
reading
were,
of
if we
the
can,
conduct.
Emily?
If I can thank the-
Where were you? Innismorn.
I'll show you Innismorn because it was number one on the Clyde Cymru target list. And you can see what's happened here. They haven't gained it. Labour has held it on 42% share of the vote, and Clyde has slipped down there just behind the Conservatives into third place. So when we look at the swing, what might have been on a good night a swing towards Clyde away from Labour actually becomes a swing, as you can see, from the Conservatives to Labour, 2.1%. And we're going to hand back now. I think we've got Renfrewshire East, have we?
We might even have Dunbartonshire East. East Dunbartonshire, where John Nicholson,
869,
standing
percentage
in the yellow and
poll
black,
being
SNP
78.23%.
MP at the moment. Or
I,
dissolution,
Jerry
should say.
Cornish, returning officer for the UK parliamentary election in the East Dunbartonshire county constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes polled for each candidate
He
at
had a
the
majority
election
of just
was
over
as follows.
2,000 2 years ago.
Callum McNally, Scottish Labour Party, 7,531. Sheila Meakin, Conservative and Unionist, 7,563. John Nicholson, Scottish National Party, 15,684. Joe Swinson, Scottish Liberal Democrats, 21,000. $21,023. There were 68 rejected
Joe
ballot
Swinson,
papers.
former minister in the coalition for the Liberal Democrats, recovers Dunbartonshire East from John Nicholson, there on the right. And Joe Swinson in red will now perhaps just come up and make a speech. We don't know. We'll see. Yes.
For her to do that, David. I mean, the Lib Dems will be absolutely thrilled by that result because she was, when
She comes to the count.
I'm sure they'll try. Whether or not she'll answer anything is a different question. She's looking pretty grim-faced as she arrives. Philip May, who made an appearance on the campaign trail at the last moment yesterday, smiling for the cameras.
The only new thing we've discovered about the Prime Minister is that the naughtiest thing she ever did was walk through a wheat field as a child, which was a revelation. I thought.
Running through wheat fields was the
Running
naughtiness
through
of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe walking through would have been fine. But look, I mean, it seems that this is a political disaster for her this night.
So back to Jo Swinson, who was a feisty performer when she was in the House of Commons and could be a leader, a potential leader, you were saying.
She's
the
talked
Liberal
of that
Democrats.
sometimes in Lib Dem circles. She has talked of in that way. I mean, now she's back in Westminster, you know, we'll see that there's another former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg, arriving at his count. As I was saying, Labour sources have told me they expect to take Hallam from Nick Clegg, which
He's
is
looking quite uneasy, you have to
scout.
say, doesn't he?
He is looking very uneasy.
He had a good campaign, Nick Clegg. A lot of people thought, you know, he spoke well on Brexit and all the rest of it, wanting this second referendum.
Well, he
I wonder whether
refound
he'd
a
be
role.
relieved, though, perhaps not to remain in the House of Commons, having been leader of a small Liberal Democrat party.
Well, since 2015, there was speculation about whether or not he would actually stand again.
Yeah.
I wonder, had this Parliament run to 2020, whether he would have stood again. But the early election that was called meant that he did stand again. You suspect that perhaps he will find other things to do.
Well, if your
Of course, I
information
suppose
is
MPs
correct
do,
that he's
but-
lost,
Well,
we need just to make sure that it is correct.
we do. Labour sources have told me they're confident of taking it, but of course, until we hear it from the returning officer, we can never be quite sure. But certainly his body language would suggest that. We're also hearing the result on a knife edge for Tim Farron, the Lib Dem leader, to potentially a recount in Westmoreland.
Glasgow East, held by the SNP, with a majority of 10,000, just over 10,000.
Karen Finnegan, Independent, 158.
Thank you. The declaration will be made by the High Sheriff of
Left
South
Glasgow
Yorkshire.
East and
Thank
gone
you.
back to Sheffield. If they can sort it out.
I, Stephen Ingram, being the returning officer at the election held on Thursday, June 2017, do hereby give notice that the number of votes cast for each candidate at the election is as follows. Nick Clegg, Liberal Democrats, 19,756. Jared O'Mara, Labour Party, 21,881.